My heart is filled with so much excitement and love and gratitude as I join together with my dear friend and dear sister, Charmaine. I met Charmaine years ago during my time in living with California, and she was such a grounding, bright light of forward movement in my life and offered so much guidance that I can truthfully say the human and the woman that I am today is because of the love and the tenderness and the wisdom from this being. So, dear ones, I'm so excited to introduce you, Charmaine. And Charmaine, please share yourself and who you are with our listeners.
Thank you for that lovely, lovely introduction. I'm so grateful for our connection. My name is Charmaine, and I crossed paths with Renee, I think, when I was doing meditation classes at Enlightened. It was a meditation studio. And um, my journey as a human has kind of um, brought me to a lot of different avenues. I consider myself a tour guide. That's the phrase or the name that I call myself because I do a lot of things. In my journey, I've done energy healing. I'm a nurse. I'm a mom. I'm a partner. I'm a life coach. I am a Akashic Records reader. Um, and quantum healing hypnosis guider. So there's a lot of things that I do, but ultimately, I feel like it all comes together through the term tour guide because I enjoy being on this journey of self discovery and I meet amazing, magical, loving humans along the way. And I truly believe that we're all just walking each other home. And so, however I show up, whether it's as a mom, as a partner, as a nurse, as a coach, every human that I come across, I believe that, in one way or another, we are showing each other the way by being our most authentic selves. So, in everything that I do, whether it's with a client, with a patient, with loved ones, I feel like there is an element of, like when we show up, we don't necessarily have to force people on our path, but how we show up in our authenticity helps people see what's possible. It points out paths maybe that weren't available to them at the time when we show up in our truest selves. And whoever wants to join us along the way for however how long they decide to be with us is always a bonus. So I'm just enjoying traveling on this journey and enjoying the company of the amazing humans like Renee, who I get to meet along the way. So, yeah, I don't.
It's so exciting. It's so exciting. And Charmaine, how has the act of forward movement transformed your life?
um, from the shares that I've witnessed you share, I'm always reminded of the. Um, it's kind of like not really a mirror, but like in our conversations in the past, we've shared lots of stories and lots of, teachings in a way, and seeing that reflected in how you show up and how you share reminds me of the importance of one play. You always have such like a playful energy, even if what you're sharing isn't necessarily playful or bright. There's an element of just kind of flowing with your expression, which I love. There's a playfulness to your expression regardless of the mood or the emotion that you're sharing. So for me, that energy of playfulness in everything that you share reminds me that that's the way forward. You know, a lot of times we kind of get caught up in our minds of like, what do I need to do next to move forward? Or, you know, what is the next step? Let me logically think about it. Let me come up with a plan. But again, in witnessing you and witnessing your shares and witnessing your expression, I'm always reminded that that energy or that feeling of play is always what will invite us to the next step. So
Oh,
yeah, yeah.
and it's so exciting, Charmaine, because you are one of my favorite playmates in the world that I have met so far. And it's
Mm.
wild to hear you say that I remind you of play, because every time I am with you in the physical, we play and you're the initiator of the play. So, how beautiful it is that we are mirroring to one another this essence of play. And I never connected play with forward movement. And I'm curious right now, in this season of your life, how has play moved you on a different path than where you were going?
Yeah. So in my spiritual journey, or I guess, yeah, you know, I've always kind of seen myself, the role or the identity that I have chosen to hold on to on this path is that of like a teacher or guide. So I was very rigid in how I showed up and how I interacted with people, not just with clients, but with my loved ones. And this rigidity of like, I'm supposed to teach you this, you listen to me, became very dogmatic for me. And it affected my relationships with my loved ones. And so, in the last maybe 6 months or so, I feel like that rigidity in my identity of teacher, you know, um, kind of came to a head. And so if I didn't shift out of that story or that role of me as teacher, like I'm the one who's supposed to tell you what to do, or I'm the one who's supposed to teach you, um, if I didn't shake out of that, my relationships were kind of going to be trapped in this box. And it was already, I guess, that role or that identity in those relationships were already at its, like, I already got, we all already got what we needed from that role, from that identity. And there wasn't much room for growth with those roles. And so if I didn't break out of that role, or if I wasn't flexible enough to, you know, change or shift the dynamics, then there would be nothing left. You know, it'd be stagnant and boring and not much there. So the element of when those roles kind of got boring, you know, and I started looking for other ways to feel more alive, I was still under the impression that, well, these people in my life, they're not capable, right? Like they're not enlightened enough, or they're not there. They're not going to understand me. So I was, even though I knew I needed something different, something more, I was keeping other people in my life in these same roles, not allowing them to express themselves in a way that I actually wanted. You know, like I wanted to experience them as more than who I saw them as. Um, so I tried to look for that in other people, but it was still under the same story because I'm still experiencing my closest relationships, you know, under that same story. So, and it didn't feel good. It didn't feel good. And so using that feedback, you know, we're never stuck, right? We're never stuck in the same story. Even if we are stuck in the same story, we're always life is always giving us feedback, right? And even if the feedback is uncomfortable, it's it and we might think we're stuck, that discomfort is actually nudging us to shift. right? So I have to use the feedback. And so I started to open up, like, okay, done with these stories. They haven't served me, it feels yucky now. I'm not enjoying the story that's playing out. I'm not enjoying the energetic spaces it's taking me to. And so my belief before was, I need to change the characters in my story because the old characters suck. But by being more playful with how I experienced the people around me, experience the spaces around me, I realized that the whole world doesn't have to shift. It's my perspective, it's my stories that's playing out that have to shift. And by being more playful, just allowing the people around me to actually be playmates and to play with me in the way that I've never experienced before, by letting go of the control. Like, yeah, I thought other people had control issues, but it's actually me. So, like, by letting go of the control of how I needed to show up and how other people needed to show up, this element of play just started coming out. And just letting people show up in how they wanted to show up, like, really surprised me. And it's been really fun, and I feel like I'm meeting my loved ones for the first time. And so it's very yeah, it's and the best thing is I don't have to manage, like, I don't have to pour the energy into managing how they're going to act or what I'm going to say or what I'm going to teach. It's just very organic and so easeful, to just receive people. And it's, yeah, it just allows more energy for the playfulness to come through. Yeah.
Woohoo! Full body shivers in my mind bounced so many times, Charmaine, during the share, because I am actively relating to this 6-month season you just moved through. And I'm so curious, were there any specific actions or any tangible, movements that you chose beyond the perspective shift that you found was helpful during this season?
Um, the most, well, I mean, the perspective shift came from being open and being vulnerable. It was actually a conversation with my daughter that kind of brought me face to face with ways that I was acting that I wasn't aware of, even though, oh, I'm spiritual, I meditate, I do all this stuff, I should know all these things. But she brought her perspective of me that I wasn't aware of. So being willing to receive feedback, and being open to it, that's what caused the perspective shift for me. And after that conversation, being humble enough to acknowledge the ways that I wasn't showing up and apologizing to people who I might have, like, brushed off, or, the people who I affected. And in a way, my daughter also showed me that the things that I actually wanted, the experiences, the connections that I wanted, wasn't because other people weren't capable of giving it to me, it's because I was pushing them away. And so just being open, like, being humble, apologizing, for the ways that I might have pushed other people away. And again, being open to their expressions, um, really, really kind of brought all these walls down for everybody, not just for myself, but, for the other party. And so also journaling really helped. So after that conversation, I started journaling. And then in journaling, I also saw through my words, or maybe just in the being in the observer mind space as I'm journaling, like, oh, I did do this, or oh, I did do that. And so just being more reflective, I guess, really helped. And but I think the biggest thing is communication, like really, not just in apologizing, but also in communicating my needs instead of assuming stories or assuming what other people are capable of, or assuming that I'm responsible for keeping everybody happy. Just communicating my feelings, communicating my needs, and allowing people the space to communicate back their feelings, and whether they have the capacity to either receive what I'm offering, or to hold space or to offer what I'm asking for. Just really, really communicating, because I think in the past, even though I've helped other people with people pleasing, like I've also gotten to like a deeper layer of my own people pleasing tendencies of like, well, I'm the bigger person because I'm not going to tell them how I really feel because it's going to hurt them or it's going to offend them, when that's really the biggest barrier to, us receiving what we really want from each other. So communication has also been huge, huge, huge.
The act of communication, and this is reminding me of something Charmaine, of one of my mentors, Victoria Washington, shared in relationship to money. Is like, ask money, what's it like to be in relationship with me? And then she took it a step further to say, ask the loved ones in your life, what is it like to be in relationship with me? And it sounds like this is an activity, a playful curiosity expression that you and your daughter leaned into. And there's people in my life that I am actively thinking of, like, I am in control, Charmaine. I'm actively controlling the environment to honor my energy. But in reality, there's no honoring of the energy because I'm contracting it. I'm
Yes.
not allowing it to move and expand in relation with the other.
Mm-hmm.
And Charmaine, in your life, like this moment right now is so present for you because it sounds like it's your family and you love them so dearly, and it's so playful to enter this new relationship with them.
Mm-hmm.
Do you feel that you have ever been on the other end of this conversation with someone else in your life in the past? Have you been the one that initiated this, like, hey, I'm noticing that you're acting this way, or X, Y, and Z before?
Yes. So with my partner, like I have brought up patterns in the past where, like, I don't like it when you do this thing, or, like it makes me feel a certain way when you do this thing. So I have been on the other end where I have communicated how I'm experiencing another person, when they're triggered, or, um, but also in reflection, there's the, people are responsible for their own reactions and how they respond to communication, but there's also an energy behind. There's, the tone of how we express ourselves, the reason why we are expressing ourselves, those all influence how it's received. So in the past, when I have communicated, my discomfort or my anger or my hurt, it was coming from a place of like, you need to change. You're responsible for me feeling this way. Like, you're a bad person. So change it because I'm uncomfortable. So that was the energy I approached it with before. And so it now, from this new perspective that I'm in right now, it was kind of beautiful how my daughter approached me with it, because I knew it wasn't coming from a place of her telling me I need to change. She was just sharing this observation with me because she loved me. Like, she didn't have an agenda. Like, she loved me. She loved the other person that was involved, and she wasn't taking sides or anything. She was just expressing her observation. And uh, so I think that kind of made it easy, not easy, but that helped me receive her transmission, her feedback, because it wasn't coming from a place of like, you're wrong, you're bad, you're this, it's shameful. It was just, okay, there's no agenda here. I can receive this. I know it's coming from a place of love, but she doesn't need me to do anything or fix anything from this transmission. It was completely up to me what I wanted to do with that information. So that's what I've also learned from my daughter. So now when I communicate with my loved ones, even if it might sound like a criticism, it's not coming from a place of like, you need to fix this or anything. It's just like, I feel when this happens, I feel this way, and I'm not offering like, hey, you need to do this or you need to do that. It's just witness me. This is how I feel. What you choose to do after that is completely up to you. Even if it's an apology, I'm like, hey, even if you don't accept this apology, you totally you are within your rights to not accept this apology, but I just need to share this with you. And so yeah, so not having an agenda, I guess, or not having an agenda for the other person, like not controlling what they're what how they're going to receive it or what they're going to do with information. I think for me, from my experience, is the key to yeah, to the ease in that interaction.
It can, it, from my experience, and also I'm curious, Charmaine, for you as well, like it's a pretty intimidating experience to communicate with someone openly and vulnerably. There's a lot of emotions and sensations that buzz up in the body. So to be able to foster these moments of ease throughout the conversation and the before and after of the conversation, it allows the body to feel a little bit more at peace and safe in the moment.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm also wondering too, so you mentioned how this journey of yours began about 6 months ago, and fast forward, here we are 6 months later. And to dive into the ooey gooey middle aspect of this 6 month journey, I know in previous lifetimes, aka previous years, you and I have dove into the conversation of the void and this like a flotation of emptiness and the feelings of what is this. And I'm wondering, throughout your journey of this 6 months, was it easeful the entire time, or did you find yourself dipping in and out of the sensation of the void?
Hell no, it's not easy.
Yeah.
No, the void is never easy. And I feel like, like in the stickiest parts of this 6 month journey, um I feel like, like the things that I was blaming other people for, like, oh, you're not, we're not, I don't have a deep enough emotional connection with you because you're not capable. It was actually me. So everything I was judging other people for was actually reflections of myself. And so when I pushed these people away and I was left with myself, I had to face these parts of me and I briefly dated, and like even in interacting with other people, like I still carried those parts of me with me. So it doesn't matter if I change up the characters, like it's those parts of me that I couldn't really run away from. And so I just had to sit with myself. And the journaling helped because, I'm like writing down these feelings, these thoughts, and allowing myself to feel the discomfort of loneliness, of like, oh shit, I did push people away. Why did I push people away? Like, what am I afraid of? Like, what was I afraid they might see? So, like, asking myself those questions, and even like I have coworkers who I really, really love, and I work the late shift, and so there's two coworkers who I'm always like, we have like therapy sessions because usually we don't have patients late at night. And for like during the heaviest part of my journey, they were gone. So I was alone at work late at night, no patients, no coworkers, and I'm like, what am I gonna do? Like, I was forced to really sit with myself. So all these support, these people that I had for support, for one reason or another, they just, I mean, we know the reason, but they were just not available, not because they wanted to not be available. It just, the circumstances just ended up that way. And I always believe that there's a reason for everything. So I just really had to literally sit with myself and get comfortable with the uncomfortable, with the discomfort, and yeah, just get comfortable with myself. And I live up in the mountains, so I thought I was really comfortable. Like, solitude, yeah, bring it. Like, I thought I was comfortable with myself already. I already have like a lot of space to be with myself. But being with myself, because I live up in the mountains, it's very pretty, like it's beautiful sunrises, clouds everywhere. It's cool to be by yourself when it's pretty, when it's, like gorgeous. But when you're sitting in the discomfort of, like, I'm in a hospital, it's not pretty. I don't have pretty clouds to look at. I don't have pretty trees, sunrises to look at. But I'm still in my body, right? Can I be comfortable? Can I feel at home in my body, regardless of where I'm at, regardless of my environment, and regardless of my feelings? Can I sit with myself and be with myself? So yeah, it hasn't been comfortable, to answer your question. The void, I've been avoiding the void. But this period of time just really, I couldn't escape it. Yeah.
What a powerful lesson, is it not?
Mm-hmm.
That as a human, regardless of our consciousness, we will always, always, always be given and be pushed into the opportunity to play in the void. And
Mm-hmm.
the more that we fight that void, the more it's like, oh my gosh, what's covering me?
Yeah.
But the more that we're like, shake it off. And then you
Yeah.
realize that the void is just an expansiveness to play in. And I
Mm-hmm.
adore that you brought up your mountain home, because as you were sharing, Charmaine, what came to mind is how this past 6 months and the like murkiness of the void in the hospital, not having any of your coworkers there and the loved ones are gone, it's just you. And then what came to heart and mind is your time in the mountains when you first moved, and how it felt like and it sounded like you went through a similar experience, but not with the relations, with the physical.
Yes.
And how powerful it is that you've gone from like the physical to the relations to yourself. And it's this like infinity loop of
Yeah.
dancing in and out of what feels safe in the body and what doesn't feel safe in the body.
Yes. And it, like when we learn lessons, we usually think like, oh, okay, they're done. But like life always, like you said, it's kind of like a loop or a spiral where we might go back to the same themes, but on a deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper level until we are energetically done. I mean, not necessarily completely done, but where enough of the charge is released, regard around that theme. So yeah, thank you for that reflection. Yeah, there's different levels, and it feels like themes that are cyclical, that keep coming up, and we come back to them until we've learned or absorbed or let go of whatever we need to around that theme. Yeah.
And I absolutely adore how our conversation is being recorded on this full moon in Taurus, lunar eclipse. And regardless if one believes in astrology or connects with it or not, Western astrology, I've been reading a little bit about it. And this cycle with the lunar eclipse is a year and a half, 2 year cycle that is coming to a completion in relation to money, wealth, relationships, union. And how we've been really diving into the shadowy, voidy aspects. And
Mm-hmm.
Charmaine, it's been 2 years, of this
Yeah.
cycle, and it feels like it's a cherry on top our conversation today, because I feel like you and I have mirrored so many aspects of life and in conversation, and we've played through it literally together. And to have this conversation today, to be like, yeah, the void is there and the relationships are there and I'm still here. So
Yeah. Yeah. And it's, like It's how we choose to show up. Like it's going to be there, but our experience of the situations of the void will always depend on how we choose to show up for it. So yeah. And I also love the reflection of the timing, because when we were trying to come up with the dates for this, we're like, oh, 11/11 sounds good, and I knew this eclipse was here, but when we decided to do it at this time, I didn't consciously think like, oh, we're gonna do it on the eclipse. So it's just beautiful how whatever time we picked, it would have been awesome. It would have been divine. So
It's so divine. It's so divine. And Charmaine, I would love to dive into something right now as well. And the beings who are tuning into this conversation and co-creating it with us, they may know or may not know that within my business and within my life, one of my foundational mantras is we make choices, we get feedback, and then we move on and make new choices. And that mantra has come directly from your wisdom, that has come directly from the wisdom that pulsates through you being an open channel. And I would love for you to expand on this mantra or this idea and share with whatever comes to mind and heart for you right now.
Mm-hmm. In my work as a coach, as a Akashic Records Reader, a lot of people kind of are looking for the blockage, right? Or the blockage or the energetic pattern or something to kind of point their finger at and be like, that's why I'm stuck. That's the reason, right? And so in the readings that I do point out energetic patterns. But like for other people, like even in everyday life, they'll say, oh, it's because the person's a narcissist, or all these labels that we give to either people or situations. um, and so a lot of people think, oh, or even like disease, right? Like, oh, I have this disease, I've been diagnosed, so this is the story that's going to play out, or it's been in my family, I'm stuck, right? Like this is just how it's going to be. And so again, when in the readings that I've done for you, or in the readings that I've done for other people, or even in coaching, or even in meditation, and as a tour guide, like I feel like it's my, not really job, but it's my role, I guess, to point out possibilities, right? We can be stuck if we choose to be stuck, but like I mentioned earlier, life is always giving us feedback, whether it's on our body, pain points, pain, tension in our body, symptoms that we feel. That is all information, and information we can always do something with, right? Like it's data points, it's all data. And what we choose to do with the data is completely up to us. We can either use the data to reinforce a belief, right? We can say, oh, well, that's just how it's always going to be. So I'm just going to keep continuing this pattern. Or you can use it as a data point to shift a variable, like, okay, this is how it's always been, so there's something that I can change to shift it, even if just a little bit. And I like to see life as an experiment. And so that's kind of like me merging the nerdy part in me and also the playful, little kid in me, like, oh, let's see what happens if we change this, or let's see what happens if we do that. So data, we always have a choice what to do with it. Like I said, we can either keep continuing the same patterns, whether we enjoy it or not, it's always a choice. And we can also shift, even if it's like a little tiny shift. I do energetic readings where, even just like a 1% shift in your energy, in the energy behind the choices that you make over the long run. Like if, for example, you're a boat, right? If you just shift like 1 degree in your direction over the long term of your course, that's like a huge shift over time and distance, even if just like a 1% shift in how you show up, the energy behind your choices, it can make a big difference. So yes, we can be stuck with our choices, but we can also unstick ourselves. And it doesn't have to be a huge life change. You could quit your job, or you can just choose to show up in a different way at your job. So, it's little things do add up to a big thing, or you could also do a big thing, but a lot of times the big things that we do can be such like a huge shock on our nervous system that it's not sustainable. So even the little things do count. And yeah,
I'm smiling so big over here, Charmaine, because my life is chock full of big experiences that have shocked my nervous system by my own doing. And not to put myself in the room of failure or mistake, even in that conversation, I have learned that, for one, let's like not jump full deep in without having some loose plan and maybe backup plan to honor the nervous system. And also, I feel that this mantra, Charmaine, has supported me so powerfully in my life because of just the human that I am and how I'm really intense and how I'm going to make the big choice. Like I'm not going to make myself wrong for doing that. So to have the mantra of I make choices, I get life feedback, and then I make choices again, allows the spaciousness for big choices if you want to make big choices. It allows the spaciousness for these micro choices. And I've come to you so often with physical ailments or saying like, oh, this just is still here. Or I remember on my birthday one year, we went out together and I had this cold sore on my lip, and my consciousness knows that it is a manifestation of the emotions within. And to not beat the self up on that, to say, I don't like the feedback of my cold sore, period. What am I going to continue to do moving forward? And something I absolutely adore from you and the way that you show up in the world, Charmaine, is how you have this aspect of science and curiosity and your nurse background, and how eloquently you merge in union with the spiritual world. And I feel like there's people, so many people in the world who are skeptics or who push back consciously of, yeah, that must be all silly and goofy because this is what the majority of people are doing. And to have someone I love so dearly be able to speak firmly from the foundation of knowledge and data, and then merge it with, and you could try this out of curiosity. You could tap into your Akashic records. You can play with energy and go on these tour guide field trips with me in the astral plane. Like, it's so beautiful. It's so beautiful. And I'm wondering if you have bumped up into people or to people who have shared that this path of becoming more of you, of healing, of expanding your vibration is silly and goofy and skeptical. How do you approach an experience like that with someone?
Can I pause first, because I as you're talking,
Of course,
I
yes, yes.
wanted to speak to how huge of a difference a little bit of a shift makes. Because when we started this conversation, like the background and your thing was like dark, like you had a little bit of sun, but the sun just shifted a little bit, and look how bright your background is, like all the sparkles. And so yeah, I just wanted to mention that because it's
Dance party.
yeah, dance party.
We see it every time we come together as Field of Play.
But I'm like, oh, pretty lights, I'm distracted. But just to speak to, your question. Yes, I have, like being in the medical field, like it's two opposite ends of the spectrum, the healing spectrum. Um, During COVID, the pandemic, there were a lot of people who were adamant about vaccines. So I was put in a position where I was pressured to conform, right? Like this is the way, this is the only way. And I had to stick to my personal beliefs, my personal experience of like, well, I trust my body. I trust my body to do what it needs to do. Even if I get COVID, I'm going to trust my body to handle it. And so a lot of people were very, you know, rigid, and I tried to convince them. But again, in my journey, like the more you try to force your ideals or your beliefs on somebody, the more they're going to resist. So it went both ways. Like the more I tried to convince them, the more resistant they were. The more they tried to convince me, I'm like, hell no, you know. So the more resistant I became. So I'm just like, you know what? You do you, I'm gonna do me, and we can coexist, you know. And so that worked for me. I was able to get an exemption for myself, and my coworkers were supportive. You know, they knew my beliefs, I knew theirs. We didn't force it on each other. It's just the bigger system that kind of was forcing it on me. But there are people, you know, people who I have tried to help, you know, loved ones too, with their health. But again, like me forcing things on them, forcing like, no, this is how you should do it, or that you're doing it wrong, you shouldn't take that medication, doesn't really serve either one of us. So I usually tell them, you could try this, right? But it gives them the freedom to take the medication still or do whatever they want. And then when that doesn't work, then they usually come to me like, hey, I didn't feel good when I took this medication. Um, do you have, you know, like then they'll ask me, then they're more open. So for me, I've found that again, it doesn't serve to be dogmatic, whether you're holistic on the eastern side of medicine or more on the western. It doesn't serve to be so rigid. You can be rigid with your own, you know, practice, but when it comes to forcing how things should be on other people, it's not usually well received. And if they're coming from a place of like, even if they do choose to go with what you recommend, if it's coming from a place like, well, it's not going to work anyways, you know, like if it's coming from that place, it's not going to serve them either. So it's better to offer suggestions, or maybe just be an example of what works for you, like talk freely about what works for you. And if people are open to it, they'll come and ask you, you know. So it's better to come from a place of invitation versus shoving things down people's throats, you know, literally.
Charmaine, it's one of my biggest life lessons right now, for sure. And I actually journaled on it about an hour
Mhm.
before we entered this conversation, and how the breakthrough, the realization, the remembering that came through for me today is that I am safe not to push ideas, beliefs, or experiences onto other people, specifically my loved ones who I have strong relationships with. And I really desire them to have these experiences of sound journeys, for example, or of shaking the physical body and feeling the sensations that come afterwards. And these individuals who I love so dearly, I've done exactly what you shared earlier in our conversation, Charmaine. I've put them in a box, and I've put myself in a box of this is how we coexist. And it's almost like I want them to change,
Mhm.
and for my own pleasure, so I can keep them in my life.
Yeah.
And what I'm noticing right now with our conversation is that even that I've made a story about it. I've created a story, and I have the opportunity to shake the story off and then play within the sphere of possibility in relationships. And who is this person now? Not who I used to know or who I hope they are to become.
Mhm.
It's it's such a trippy experience to be a human.
Yes.
Consciously aware of vibration, consciously aware of our path of the void and playing in it. And is there an experience that you have had that just comes to your heart or mind right away in relation to a spiritual experience? May it be, sound journey or plant medicine or commune in nature. Is there an experience that redirected you or shifted the person that you have become now?
Um, Well, the one that really sparked my spiritual journey was like a series of events where, when when I wasn't aware of this expansive spiritual aspect of myself, the thing that shifted was, um, I think, what was it? I think I had undiagnosed depression at that time, and I was looking for old ways for me to feel better again. My weight over my lifetime has gone up and down. So there was a period of time when I was really energized. I was working out and, I just felt good. I had lost weight. And then something, I think my purse got stolen at the gym. And so that kind of snuffed the light out of me, that feeling of, just, I feel good. And I think it was like 3 years after that where, I went back to working out. I went back to eating healthy. I drank alcohol. I smoked because I went through all these extremes looking for something outside of myself to get me to that feeling good place again. And when I couldn't, my last resort, kind of my Hail Mary, was I got an email for like a discount for a psychic reading or Reiki session, and I didn't know what that was at the time, but I just signed up for it. So I'm like, okay, $35. If nothing happens, then I'm just out $35. But if they can offer me some kind of answer, then great. So that was my first encounter with like a psychic, and but it wasn't even the answers that she gave me that unlocked this aspect of me. She told me about Reiki, and at the time I didn't know what it was, but being a nurse, when she told me what it was, I'm like, ooh, like I can help other people heal with Reiki. And so even though I was skeptical about everything she told me, that Reiki component, like, ooh, it kind of sent me on down the rabbit hole. So that led me to another person who did a Reiki session on me. That was my first experience of energy healing. But she also kind of opened me up to communicating with spirits of patients that I've taken care of in the past. And so that was the rabbit hole I went on. That kind of opened me up to just being curious. It gave me permission to explore my curiosity and just to follow whatever, fell on my lap. I'm like, oh, what's that? Let me read about that. Let me learn that. And that's kind of what led me on this trip. But again, going back to spirals, like even, and also journeys, like even when we think we have the answer, like Reiki, I thought I could heal the world. I can't heal the world, even with Reiki. And even with other people, as much as I try to heal them as a nurse, physically or energetically, it's not my job to heal other people. Like it's my job to hold the space for them to heal themselves. So I I lost my train of thought. Yeah, so it's not my job to heal others, and I keep going back to, okay, that's my point. So even learning all these spiritual concepts, energy healing, quantum healing, hypnosis, going into other dimensions, at the root of it all, even if I blast off into other dimensions, it's all about showing up here in the present, how I show up in my body. That is the most powerful change I can embody and also create for the world, is how I choose to show up in my body. Because I've, like when I'm always focused on other people, right? Oh, I'm going to heal you. I'm going to do this for you. In a way, I am shifting the focus away from myself. And maybe I want to heal others because I feel uncomfortable that they're in pain. So I need to focus. Yes, it's good to help other people, but not from a place of like, oh, I'm going to do this for you. It's coming from a place of, I want to do this. This feels good. This feels playful. This feels bright for me. I would love to help you heal, but not from a place of like, I'm going to do this for you. I'm going to be the healer. I'm going to give you all the answers. It's just coming from a place of like, oh, hey, this feels like a good experience for me right now. I think I can learn something from this right now. I think you can learn something from this right now. So let's do this, coming from a place of play and wonder and curiosity. That's how I choose to experience things right now, and how I show up for patients, clients, my loved ones. So, yeah, I don't know if that answered your question.
Oh yeah, we went somewhere, and it's exactly where we landed. And there's this imagery of like the pedestal. There are no pedestals. Nobody is on the pedestal. We're all the human flesh walking around, consciousness in human form. And it's so beautiful to continue to come back to the self. And every time that we can look at, for example, the global consciousness right now of how I am witnessing so many people being like, look what this is happening, they're doing this, blah, blah, blah. But each time there's a finger pointed, it's just pointing right back at you, saying like, oh, but what about that is making you uncomfortable because you are uncomfortable by your action doing it. And there's such empowerment in taking the choice to decide to shift your perspective of how you perceive this reality. And I absolutely love and adore being in these expressions with you, Charmaine, and diving deep, deep, deep. Just like scratch the surface, sometimes we're off playing with mushrooms outside in the land of the greeny moss and your beautiful waterfall. Oh, it's so grateful for Gaia. So grateful for Gaia. So Charmaine, last question here. I am curious, what is alive for you in this moment in time when it comes to embracing forward movement?
Again, this concept of play. And I think, well, I've shared this with you, with my business, I've slowed down. I've kind of not really let it go, but, like in this process of shifting on my most intimate relationships, I've taken a step back in my business, but again, it's all about perspective. So instead of seeing that as a step back, like everything that helps me feel alive in connection with other people, anything that helps me feel seen, heard, and free, again, in relationship with other people, it will always be a forward movement. So even if we judge ourselves like, oh, I'm behind with my business, oh, I'm not doing this, it's all about the stories. It's all about the perspective that any step where we feel more free, any step that we take where we feel more seen, alive, again, felt, heard, is forward movement. And so that is what feels most alive for me right now. At the beginning of our call, before you hit record, you asked me how I was feeling, and I told you I feel great right now. I feel loved, I feel held, I feel supported, I feel abundant, even though I'm not doing anything with my business right now. I would used to, like, maybe 6 months ago, I'd be like, oh my gosh, I'm not doing anything. Like there would be like an internal alarm sounding like, hey, you're not doing anything with your business. But now I'm like, I trust that whatever it is that I'm doing right now, whatever it is that I'm shifting right now, will eventually show up however it needs to, whether it's in my business, whether it's in how I show up for patients, whether it's, how I show up for my loved ones. It's all connected, and there's no parts of me that will be left behind.
No parts. All of them are with you. And they'll continue moving forward with you. And even something, I'm just going to say it because it's been on the tip of my tongue, throughout our entire conversation is your creativity and artistry, and how you welcome the life force energy to channel and move through your hands and create physical artistry for the other. And whether, as you said, moving forward, whether it's within the realm of your business, your relations, your work, your creative artistry, I know for certainty that whatever is to come is, I'm just so excited for the world to witness and to receive. And yes, Charmaine, for all of the beings here, how can they reach out to you or be in your sphere of energy consciousness moving forward?
Um, so on Instagram, they can find me at holding underscore, so two underscores space, and that's primarily my digital playground and journal. I haven't been as active on there, surprisingly. I That was another identity I had before. I'm like, oh, I'm always in my stories, I'm always there. But that's something that's also been kind of shifting. Like I don't feel the need to be there as much. And I'm not judging myself for that. Again, that used to be a huge part of my identity, but that's my primary playground. So if there will be any offerings, that's where I will announce it first. But for now, I'm just playing here, like here where I'm at and with the people I love. And sometimes I'll share snippets on Instagram, but for now, here is where it feels most alive right now.
Oh, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. We love you so much. And here's to future conversations in the playground and playing.
Yes. Thank you for this conversation. This was healing for me too. And again, reflecting with you and playing with you and just being in conversation, communication with you is always a pleasure.